Imagine this. It's a Wednesday, the second day of February, 1977, New York City, around 10 p.m. You're in a popular discotheque called Regine's. The music is loud, the room electric. Thelma Houston's Don't Leave Me This Way melts into Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely. The dance floor glows, the air thick with perfume, cigarettes, and celebrity. Wait, I forgot to tell you. Your name is Stephanie Mills, and your date for the evening is Michael Jackson. Yeah, that Michael Jackson.
Gary, Indiana, here's the youthful Jackson 5.
By 1977, Michael had already been famous for over 8 years. When the Jackson 5 burst onto the scene in 1969, it felt less like a debut and more like an invasion. And in less than a year, between December 1969 and October 1970, they released 4 albums. And just like that, they replaced the Supremes as Motown's biggest selling group.
Diana Ross and the Supremes, who discovered the Jackson 5 in Gary, Indiana. Wasn't it Gary, Indiana? Stand up and take a bow there. Diana Ross.
From the beginning, show business shaped their story. Even their origin myth was carefully curated in the back rooms of Motown's offices. The official narrative said Diana Ross, leader of the Supremes and Motown's crown jewel, discovered the Jackson 5 at a talent show in Gary, Indiana. The truth was very different.
This guy named Bobby Taylor and Gladys Knight told Motown about us. So we decided to do a little audition. We auditioned for Berry Gordy in Detroit. And here we are singing, and all the Motown stars were there. Diana Ross, Temptations, Smokey Robinson. And we're singing, and all these people are watching us. And we did our whole show, and they loved it. They really raved over it. And Diana Ross came over to us, and she said especially, I loved what I saw, and she said she wanted to take special interest in our career.
It's wonderful to return as your hostess again, especially tonight when I have the pleasure of introducing a great young star who has been in the business all of his life. He's worked with his family, and when he sings and dances, he lights up the stage.
In August 1969, Diana Ross sent a telegram to the press. It said, "Come join me in welcoming an extraordinary group, the Jackson 5, on Monday, August 11th from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the Daisy, North Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills. The Jackson 5 and their sensational 8-year-old singer, Michael Jackson, will be performing in concert." 8 years old, even that was part of the myth-making. Michael's stage age was listed as such, though he was actually around 10 years old. Still a child, but not quite as unbelievable as the story suggested.
Well, who else do you think makes the stage come to real life besides me and Ed Sullivan?
From the start, Michael was positioned for stardom. He was smooth. Smooth enough to lead a band made up of his 4 older brothers, ages up to 18. He was gifted, and not in a manufactured, polished, studio type of way. Even when he sang his ABCs, it felt from the soul.
I mean, what do you put into it?
Well, whatever I sing, that's what I really mean. Like I'm singing a song. I don't sing it if I don't mean it.
There was urgency in those early years. Motown knew they had lightning in a bottle. The press would even call it Jackson Mania. It was rare, and Motown intended to capitalize on it. There were Saturday morning cartoons, commercials, picture sessions. Less than a year after their first Motown single, the 5 brothers sold out Madison Square Garden. The Jackson 5 were superstars, and Michael was the center of gravity. Even as the first wave of hysteria began to die down, as Michael grew taller and his voice settled into something more mature, they were still one of the most famous acts in the business. But the initial shine was starting to wear off. Before this night at Regine's, Michael had already released 4 solo albums, yet the last one, Forever Michael, failed to crack the top 100 on the Billboard album chart, stalling at 101. He was still the front man of the most successful black family in entertainment. But by 1975, the family had walked away from the most successful black record label in entertainment.
Wait, boys!
At the urging of their father and manager, Joe Jackson, the group announced they were leaving Motown. The reasons were pretty straightforward. They wanted control over their image, over their music, and over their money. At Motown, they were earning just 2.8% in royalties per record. Their new deal with Epic Records promised 20%. Motown sued for breach of contract, but ultimately allowed the group to record for Epic under one condition. They had to change their name. They couldn't be the Jackson 5 without Motown. So they became the Jacksons. There was another change in the group as well. Jermaine Jackson stayed behind at Motown, in part because he was married to Hazel Gordy, Berry Gordy's daughter. But the group would tell the press the main reason was because he had solo ambitions.
We want to sell twice as many records. We want to do the things that we've dreamed of.
He had been working since childhood, and by 1977, he was already a teenage millionaire, famous in a way few people ever are. His face was familiar, his voice recognizable. His name carried history.
I want you to introduce them to Michael.
But he wasn't Michael Jackson yet. At Ray Jeans, he stood out anyway. The perfectly coiffed afro, the almost soprano speaking voice. His 5'9" frame moved through the crowd with models, musicians, and nightlife royalty. He didn't blend in. He never did. But remember, you're Stephanie Mills. You met him within this transitional period. You're seated beside him at the nightclub. Andy Warhol is there. So is Michael's publicist. An interview is happening in real time. Just months earlier, the trades reported that Motown had acquired the film rights to The Wiz, the all-black Broadway reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, the very show where you played Dorothy. 8 shows a week, night after night. You built that Dorothy. On paper, it feels obvious. You have the experience, you have the vocal power, you have already proven the role works with you in the center. Any casting director for a movie would be a fool not to consider you for the part, right? Alright, let's stop pretending. In order to understand this story, we have to start in Oz. The 1939 film quite literally reshaped Hollywood. Before The Wizard of Oz, large-scale fantasy films were rare, and Technicolor productions were still relatively new. The film, produced by MGM and directed primarily by Victor Fleming, became one of the studio system's most ambitious projects. Although its initial box office performance was modest due to its high production cost, the film grew in stature through re-releases and later annual television broadcasts beginning in the 1950s. By the mid-20th century, it was considered a classic of American cinema. The premise is one most people know, but for context, let me simplify it. Dorothy Gale is a 12-year-old girl living in Kansas with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. After a tornado tears through her town, she is knocked unconscious and her house is lifted off the ground with her still inside. When it lands, she is no longer in Kansas. She wakes up in Oz, a strange, vividly colored world. Her house has crushed the Wicked Witch of the East. She is told the only way to get home is to follow the yellow brick road to Emerald City and ask the wizard for help. Along the way, she meets 3 companions: a scarecrow who wants a brain, a tin man who wants a heart, and a cowardly lion who wants courage. This film was released in 1939, the same year Gone with the Wind would come out. And according to the film system, there were no black people over the rainbow. The studio system was segregated in practice and in casting. Major productions centered white protagonists. Large-scale musicals and fantasy films rarely featured Black performers outside of limited, often stereotypical roles.
I'm really happy to introduce you Ken Harper, who is the first producer of The Wiz.
Ken Harper had an idea. A former disc jockey and music director at WPIX in New York, Harper was not a traditional Broadway producer. He wanted to retell the story of The Wizard of Oz, but make it cooler, hipper, blacker. In 1971, he first imagined the concept as a television special, starring Melba Moore as Dorothy, Flip Wilson as the Lion, Bill Cosby as the Scarecrow, and Pearl Bailey as the Wicked Witch of the West. But there was a major obstacle. According to Harper, television specials were delayed because of new network scheduling policies. So in 1972, he pivoted to Broadway. Harper believed the timing made sense. At that moment, Motown dominated popular music. 5 of the 10 top-selling records at any time carried the Motown sound. If that energy could move to the stage, he reasoned it could bring an entirely new theater audience. Young people, Black people, people who didn't traditionally see themselves reflected on Broadway. To create it, he assembled some serious talent. Charlie Smalls, a touring member of the New York Jazz Repertory Company, came on to compose the score. William F. Brown wrote the book. And Tony Award nominee Gilbert Moses, a respected director with deep roots in the Black theater, agreed to direct. Jeffrey Holder was also brought in to design costumes. But there was one problem. No one wanted to finance it. An all-Black reinterpretation of The Wizard of Oz did not read as a safe investment in the early 1970s. Broadway was expensive. Backers were cautious. But Harper kept pitching. Then, in 1973, something shifted. Harper struck up a conversation with a man who turned out to be the managing director of a pretty large company. As Harper often told it, he shared the concept and asked a simple question. Did he know anyone who might be interested in financing a Black Broadway musical? The man responded with something unexpected. The owner of his company sat on the board of 20th Century Fox, one of the largest studios in the world at the time. Harper was ecstatic, but 20th Century Fox was not in the Broadway business. They made movies. Still, Harper was able to schedule a meeting. He and Charlie Smalls flew to Los Angeles with the pitch prepared, and after that, Fox agreed to invest $780,000 with conditions. In exchange for their investment, the studio would receive publishing rights for the first film option and first rights to the soundtrack. They were officially off to see The Wizard. But before anything else, they needed a Dorothy.
At 15, The Big Break, the starring role of Dorothy in The Wiz.
Years before stepping into Regine's with Andy Warhol and Michael, Stephanie Mills felt like a 15-year-old has-been. She started early. At 9 years old, she made her Broadway debut in the musical Maggie Flynn. She played an orphan, performing alongside other child actors who would later become notable in their own right. At 11, she won amateur night at the Apollo Theater. The victory led to touring with the Isley Brothers. She recorded an album, but it failed to chart, and she was auditioning constantly for nearly every production that passed through New York. She was just under 5 feet, but her voice was not small. She knew what she could do, but what she needed was the right door. That door opened in May 1974 when she auditioned for an all-Black musical adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, now known as The Wiz. In the audition room was Ken Harper, Charlie Smalls, and Jeffrey Holder. A week later, she returned to sing Danny Boy, the same song she had performed 6 times at the Apollo. She got the role.
Stephanie Mills, 15 years old and the star of The Wiz. How you doing?
Fine.
On October 21st, 1974, the show opened in Baltimore for its first out-of-town performance. It was terrible. They hadn't had the time to do a full dress rehearsal beforehand, So that first audience essentially watched a live work in progress. They moved on to the Fisher Theater in Detroit the following month, hoping the kinks would resolve themselves. They did not. At that point, the creative team made the decision that Gilbert Moses would be replaced by Jeffrey Holder as the director. Holder was more than a costume designer. He had been active in the theater since the 1950s as a director, actor, and choreographer. Film audiences also recognized him. He had recently appeared as a villain in the James Bond film Live and Let Die. The show needed cohesion, and Holder intended to give it that. He made immediate changes. Stu Gilliam was replaced as the Scarecrow, and Hinton Battle, who had been in the chorus, stepped into the role. Holder also reimagined Dorothy's look. The denim overalls she wore were gone, and in their place, a fluffy white dress that she would wear throughout the show. Still, parts of the score weren't landing, so Harper began reaching beyond the original creative team for input. One of the people he tapped was a young, largely unknown singer and songwriter named Luther Vandross. He would be credited as the writer for Everybody Rejoice, the show's climactic anthem. But when the show officially opened on Broadway in January 1975, the production was hemorrhaging money, and it looked like it would not survive. That same night, a closing notice was posted on the stage door. Harper went back to 20th Century Fox. If the studio wanted to protect its investment, it needed to think differently. The audience for this show was not the traditional Broadway crowd, and in turn, he pushed for an aggressive marketing campaign.
The Wiz live on stage at the Broadway Theater. It's a dream come true.
Over the next several months, the show tightened. Performances sharpened and word of mouth spread. Within 7 months, there was no longer a question. The Wiz was a success.
It's my great pleasure to announce the nominees for Best Musical.
At the 1975 Tony Awards, The Wiz won 7, including Best Musical and Best Original Score. Jeffrey Holder earned himself 2 for Best Direction of a Musical and Best Choreography. Ted Ross and Dee Dee Bridgewater won for their performances as The Lion and Glinda.
Thank you.
But Stephanie Mills, the show's Dorothy, was not nominated. In 1975, she told the Boston Globe, "Yeah, I got lots of money in my bank accounts. Next thing I want to buy me is a black Seville. But when I think things over, I'm lonely. Lonelier than ever. There's no time to hang out with my friends. There's only time to work." She released an album with Motown in October 1975. The very label she once dreamed about as a child, sitting on her front steps pretending to be one of Diana Ross and the Supremes, was now putting out her music. And one day, Diana came to see The Wiz. About their first meeting, Stephanie said, "At first I didn't like her, but when we talked, I saw how really nice she is. The next time we got together, she brought me a bag of lollipops. That did it. And now we're the best of friends."
When pop singers turn to serious acting, the critics usually reach for their guns, and the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Diana Ross was officially a movie star. In October 1975, her second film, Mahogany, was released. She played the lead, of course, and the film performed strongly at the box office. At that time, Diana was arguably the most visible Black woman in the world, and one of the most famous women, period. She dominated radio, and she would dominate film. Motown CEO Berry Gordy would make sure of that.
She had never acted before. She had never done anything, but it was a thought I had, and I felt that she could do it. And she believed it. If I thought it, she could do it. And she did.
Motown's first major film project was Lady Sings the Blues, a Billie Holiday biopic starring Ross. The film was a commercial success and critical breakthrough. It received 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Actress for Ross.
I'm not going down. Because there ain't no place down there I want to be.
More importantly, it changed how the public saw her. For years, Diana had been the polished face of Motown, controlled interviews, immaculate gowns, a carefully managed image.
It's good to be something, you know what I mean?
In Lady Sings the Blues, that veneer cracked just a little bit. She played a woman battling addiction, spiraling, vulnerable. And for the first time, audiences saw her sweat. It proved something too. Diana Ross could carry a film. But Mahogany was a little different. When it was released in 1975, the box office numbers were strong, but critics were not impressed. And the turbulence had started long before the premiere. During production, Berry Gordy clashed with the film's original director, Tony Richardson. The conflict escalated, and Gordy fired Richardson and took over directing duties himself. Diana was not happy. That pattern has started when she was a teenager in the Supremes days. From the songs she sang, to the gown she wore, to the way she answered questions in interviews, her career had always been carefully controlled. And now it was happening in film. Acting had been one of the few areas where she felt like she had a sense of creative space. But with Mahogany, Gordy finding a reason to fire the director and taking over that space as well felt like a return to something she thought she had outgrown.
And she wanted stardom in the worst way, and I wanted it for her. We had a goal. We had told each other that we would never let our relationship get involved with her career and my vision and my plan, and we were focused on that. But the relationship started getting in the way.
She was so unhappy during filming that she left before the film was finished, forcing Gordy to use a body double to finish the picture. In the aftermath, Diana did not lash out publicly. She rarely did. Speaking to the Associated Press, she said, "I'll admit, if I had been the producer-director of Mahogany, I might have made different choices. It was measured, diplomatic, but the critics were far less restrained." One reviewer at Time magazine put it bluntly, accusing Berry Gordy of squandering one of America's most natural resources, Diana Ross. And beneath the box office numbers and their internal tension, there was a growing question in the industry. What was Diana going to do next? Motown Pictures had already moved on. Starring Richard Pryor and Billy D. Williams, the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings was a baseball comedy. Lighter, broader, a clear tonal shift from the high-fashion melodrama of Mahogany. Berry Gordy had hired 26-year-old Robert Cohen to help lead Motown's film division. Cohen, along with a then relatively unknown director named John Badham, was in New York casting for Bingo Long when they decided to see Broadway's newest success story, The Wiz. They sat in the audience and Cohen had a thought. This should be a movie. It was announced in the July 17, 1976 issue of the Los Angeles Times that Motown and Universal Pictures had acquired the film rights to The Wiz. 20th Century Fox, which held the first option through its Broadway investment, ultimately declined to move forward. The studio exercised its right of refusal, telling the Los Angeles Times that producing the film properly would be too expensive. To celebrate the acquisition, Motown held a widely publicized press conference. Much of the original Broadway cast was present. The message, at least publicly, suggested continuity. Robert Cohen even hinted as much in his remarks. He said, "The cast here are the most dazzling and energetic ever assembled. It would be difficult to overlook them," which made one casting decision feel almost obvious. Stephanie Mills had created The Wiz's Dorothy Gale, the most prominent role in the story. If the stage version was becoming a film, the expectation felt reasonable. Stephanie's Dorothy would come with it. In the earliest plans for the movie, the idea was to cast Dorothy with a relatively unknown actress while surrounding her with established stars in the other roles. Stephanie was actively campaigning for the part and was relatively unknown to those outside of Broadway. Meanwhile, Motown began approaching major names to anchor the film. Sidney Poitier was considered, Bill Cosby was approached as well, but Cosby hated the premise, questioning why an all-black musical would be working from a script written by two white guys.
I couldn't get The Wiz off my mind. Something about it stuck.
Cohen and Badham had written a script, but with no interest from the big names they interviewed, and Universal rejecting the script outright, The Wiz was in a perpetual hold. Then, Diana had a dream.
What are you afraid of? It's just lots of things. Messing up, one thing, and being good and people liking it.
She had first heard of the film version of The Wiz over a dinner with Motown's Suzanne DePass and Ted Ross, who had already been cast reprising his role as the Lion. Diana hadn't been asked to be a part of this movie, and of course, that made her more interested. She'd been to see the production on Broadway, even meeting the little girl who played Dorothy. She mentioned her interest to DePass, who said the movie was relatively low budget and it couldn't afford Diana, but she kept it in the back of her mind. She said, "That night after I saw Ted Ross, I couldn't sleep and I laid there for a long time, thinking about the play and the old Judy Garland film, or maybe dreaming. I'm not sure. We have a videotape of that movie. My kids love it. And about 2 a.m., I went downstairs and I put it on and watched it through. And then I called Berry Gordy and woke him up and told him I want to be Dorothy. I told him if he didn't believe I could or should or wouldn't be right for my career at this time, just tell me so I could go to sleep and forget it. I just didn't want to wait until after the film was released to say, gee, I wanted to do that, but I never told anybody." Berry told her to go to sleep and forget it. But at 4 a.m, Berry Gordy picked up the phone and called Rob Cohen. He wanted his opinion.
I called from Berry Gordy. Diana Ross had just awakened him with this crazy notion that she should play Dorothy in The Wiz. And I said, what?
Cohen later recalled the conversation and called her Miss Ross. "There are a lot of reasons why it's wrong," he told Gordy. "There's only one reason why it's right." Gordy asked what that reason was. Cohen answered, Universal would pay her $1 million to do it. And that'll get the movie made. He was right. The next morning, Universal agreed to pay Diana exactly that amount. But there was one obvious issue. In 1976, Diana Ross was 32, roughly 20 years older than Judy Garland's Dorothy in the 1939 film. If Ross was going to lead this movie, the character itself would have to change. After Universal gave the green light, Cohen spoke with John Badham to get his opinion on directing Diana. He hated the idea. According to accounts of the conversation, his reaction was pretty blunt. If Diana is in, I'm out. And Diana was in, so Badham went on to work on another project, Saturday Night Fever. All of this happened over the phone, and Berry Gordy had been the catalyst behind getting the deal done. But by most accounts, he still believed casting Diana was the wrong move. Their relationship had grown pretty complicated over the years. That's an understatement. By this point, they shared a child together, a daughter who would not learn Gordy was her father until she was about 13 years old. The personal and professional lines between them had blurred for a long time. And by the mid-1970s, that dynamic carried more tension than ever. Once the deal was finalized, Gordy stepped back and distanced himself from the project entirely. The Wiz would become the first major film of Diana Ross's career without his overseeing hand. The first major professional step she took without his direct control guiding it from behind the scenes. For the first time in years, Diana Ross was operating without Berry Gordy at the center of the decision-making. It was unfamiliar territory, but it also meant something else. Diana was getting a taste of freedom.
What are you looking forward to in the future, man?
Recording other artists and going into acting. We get a lot of scripts in, but we haven't found the exact script that we want to use.
Speaking of freedom, Michael was beginning to experience some of his own. He had flown to New York from Los Angeles, not with his brothers, not as Michael Jackson of the Jackson 5, just Michael. Robert Cohen was interested in him for the role of the Scarecrow in the film. But the new director, Sidney Lumet, was skeptical. Lumet came from a very different filmmaking tradition, grounded, serious, actor-driven. When he first thought of Michael Jackson, he didn't immediately think of a film actor. He thought what much of the industry still believed. Michael was a kid act, a Vegas act. He even had a Saturday morning cartoon, for God's sake. Lumet's first choice for the Scarecrow was comedian Jimmy Walker, best known as JJ on Good Times.
Pure dynamite!
But Walker turned the role down because the show's recording schedule conflicted with the film's production timeline. Cohen was not especially disappointed by this. In his mind, the Scarecrow needed a different kind of energy.
When I was real small, when I saw the original Wizard of Oz, the Judy Garland version, I always fell in love with the Scarecrow. I think most kids do because you feel sorry for him and everything.
So Michael came in to meet them, and the meeting changed things. When Lumet met the 19-year-old in person, he was struck by something unexpected. It's recalled in Time magazine that he said, "That boy is so sweet, he's so pure," and thus, he wanted Michael as the Scarecrow. But there was one problem. Joe Jackson.
I'm Michael Jackson. Hi, I'm Jackie Jackson. I'm the senior member of the family. Hi, I'm Marlon. Hi, I'm Ruby. And I'm Latoya. And I'm Randy Jackson. I'm Tito. This is our little sister, Janet Jackson.
Joe had always believed the family worked best as a unit. The Jacksons were the product. That structure gave him control. When one person stepped outside of it, the formula changed. And there was another issue. Joe wasn't going to get paid from this film. So Lumet and the producers made an offer. They would pay Joe Jackson $100,000 to allow Michael to take the role. In essence, a buy-in. Joe agreed, and Michael Jackson would play the Scarecrow. And for the first time in his adult life, Michael was on his own. He bought an apartment in Manhattan's Sutton Place with his sister Latoya, away from Havenhurst, away from Joe. New York became kind of a playground for him. He went to shows, wandered the city, met people outside of the tight orbit of his family and the group. One of those people was also in the room the day Michael met Sidney Lumet and Robert Cohen. His name was Quincy Jones. At first, Quincy had to be convinced to take the job arranging the music for The Wiz. But Lumet had called him personally, and Quincy felt like he owed him. Back in 1964, Lumet had given Jones his first opportunity to compose for a film in the movie The Pawnbroker. It was a major break at the time, and Quincy had not forgotten it, so he agreed to do the music for The Wiz.
It's music from the soul, though.
Michael began attending the Broadway show regularly. Eventually, he started going backstage and sitting with the cast, talking, observing. One of the people he spent time with was Stephanie Mills.
He used to come to the show all the time and hang out backstage with me. Well, Michael was really, really shy, but I was aggressive.
Oh, girl, you know, at that time, I was, 15, 16 years old? Every girl in America wanted to be Mrs. Michael Jackson, and I just knew that I was going to be Mrs. Michael Jackson.
At the time, every girl, black or white, was fanatical about the Jacksons, and especially Michael. In a 1977 profile, writer Bob Weiner even referred to him as the sex symbol of the Jacksons. But Michael didn't see himself that way. Privately, his confidence was fragile. He was dealing with severe acne, something that deeply affected him during those years. And on top of that, he carried the weight of years of criticism from his father, Joe, who had a habit of pointing out Michael's appearance. But Stephanie was enraptured by him. They'd begun to get close, eventually leading to hanging out. That same Weiner profile detailed him borrowing a tie to take her to Regine's. There, they would meet Andy Warhol, and Stephanie would even stay over at the Sutton Place apartment. She couldn't believe this was her life.
Sidney Lumet, and he said it's going to be start shooting very soon, rehearsal soon, shooting like October, November, down there in New York. And I don't know if that's definite yet. Yeah. I think I'll sit upstairs. Thank you. Huh?
The budget for The Wiz ballooned to $24 million, nearly 10 times the budgets of Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany. It was an enormous gamble for a musical film in the late 1970s. Diana Ross relocated to New York for rehearsals. She stayed temporarily at the Pierre Hotel, while an apartment at the luxurious Sherry Netherland was being renovated for her. At the time, her personal life was shifting just as dramatically as her professional one. That same year, she finalized her divorce from her husband, Robert Silverstein. For the first time in years, she was navigating life largely on her own, especially now that Berry Gordy had stepped away from overseeing the film. Silverstein did not hide his frustration about the split. He said, "My wife belongs to that company. She's totally dominated by a man who's never read a book in his life. I just can't stand it anymore to hear them calling Stevie Wonder a genius. What happened to Freud?"
The Wiz has been a runaway Broadway hit for the past 3 years with theatergoers of all ages. And the wonderful news now is that it's going to be filmed right here in New York City, which is wonderful news for New York City. And also wonderful news for the people all over the world who will be able to see this wonderful Broadway show. But I think the most exciting news is that the lead will be played by Diana Ross.
For most of her adult life, Diana existed within the Motown orbit. She had entered the company as a teenager, moving through its offices at 16 years old. Over time, she became its crown jewel, the face of the label, the center of Berry Gordy's vision. And for a long time, she embraced that role. But at 32, newly divorced and working on a major film outside of Gordy's control, something was changing. She told People magazine, "I've wanted this freedom of space for so long. I feel like Dorothy. Suddenly, boom, I'm in a whole new world."
She's an extraordinary, extraordinary talent. She's a superb actress. The voice we know about, and yet her singing reached a depth and a bigness of voice, surely vocally, the size of what she hit, the notes that she hit for the first time in her life. She's a giant.
Lumet was able to pull together a very strong cast. Ross was Dorothy and Jackson was the Scarecrow, but he even managed to get Lena Horne to play Glinda. By the 1970s, she was already a legend. One of the first Black women to sign a long-term contract with MGM in the 1940s, and a major figure in both entertainment and civil rights.
I'm yours!
Nipsey Russell was cast as the Tin Man. Russell was a well-known comedian and television personality.
Yeah, Jesse? No, I ain't seen no Jesse. I ain't seen nobody since 1922.
And Richard Pryor played the Wiz. Pryor was one of the most influential comedians in America at the time.
George Jefferson! Yeah!
There was also one direct link to the Broadway production, and that was Ted Ross, who originated the role on the stage and returned as the Lion. He was the only principal cast member from the Broadway show to have a leading role in the film.
Nothing this large has ever been done in New York City in New York's history as far as films go.
Rehearsals began in July 1977.
Michael may be the purest talent I've ever seen. He's incapable of a false moment. He's so true that anything around him has to become true, or if you don't work honestly around him, you're going to look as if you're faking it.
During rehearsals, Diana had to pull Michael to the side. He was learning the choreography too quickly. It was impressive, but it was also throwing off the balance in the room. Diana was the lead, and at that moment, she was also the bigger star. And you can't embarrass the lead. Their relationship went back years. Diana had introduced the Jackson 5 to the world after all. And for a brief time, before the Jackson family settled into their Encino home on Havenhurst Avenue, the brothers had even stayed with Diana. She was one of Michael's first impressions of a superstar. He revered her, so she asked him to dial it back. And he did.
It was huge.
Rehearsals were just as over the top as the film would eventually become. One day alone involved nearly 100 dancers. At one point, Diana looked around the room and burst out laughing. She joked, "Man, when I dream big."
And so, have you started filming that yet?
Yes, we've been filming about 2 months and a half.
Yeah.
Got about 4 months to go.
Filming began in October 1977. Diana was nervous, writing on her dressing room mirror, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." The cast, for the most part, got along. Sometimes they would go out together after a long rehearsal day, ending up at places like Studio 54. One night, Richard Pryor, whom Diana had worked with earlier on Lady Sings the Blues, asked her to come out with him.
Good night, lady.
She later recalled the night this way. Suddenly, I saw him as a very attractive man. We danced all night like the next day wouldn't come. But Richard was not the only person she grew close with during that period.
I would talk to Diane on the phone. I say, "You're gonna film The Wiz next week, huh? Or next month?" She would say, "Yeah." Next thing I noticed, I was in it.
Michael would later say that during filming of The Wiz, he confided in Diana more than almost anyone else, saying he shared his deepest, darkest secrets with her. She's so beautiful inside and out, and she can talk about anything, jewelry, hairstyles, etc. Over the years, people have tried to frame that closeness as something romantic or even inappropriate. But the evidence for that is really sort of thin. The only thing I could find was a quote from another J. Randy Taraborelli book floating around the internet. It alleges that during filming, Diana stayed one night at the Sudden Place apartment. When an assistant asked Michael if anything had happened between them, Michael said, "You'd have to ask her that." And when he asked Diana, she told him something to that same effect. But I don't know why any assistant would be asking that. What seems more likely than a serious relationship between the two is that Michael interpreted their bond through the lens he understood best. Diana had been in his life since he was a child. She represented glamour, success, a kind of emotional safety at a time where he often felt exposed. For Michael, that closeness, being able to talk to someone who understood his fame and didn't want anything from him, may have felt like love. And let Stephanie Mills tell it, she was staying at his place all the time too.
He lived on Sutton Place and he was filming the Wiz movie, and I used to go over and spend the night and I would do his laundry.
Stephanie would sometimes visit the set. Often, she came with Michael after spending the night at his place. It was a strange position to be in. She had created Dorothy on Broadway, yet had no place in the film version. Her only real connection to the production was Michael. She told reporters, "I visited the Wiz set, and Diana asked me if I was bitter that she was there and I was just passing through." Stephanie later recalled that Diana told her if she had not taken the role, Melba Moore or Lola Falana were next in line. The press coverage surrounding Stephanie wasn't particularly kind either. In the Lancaster Times, the profiler bluntly stated, "Mills has to face the reality that her rivals, even those of her own race, are conventionally attractive." Stephanie was still a teenager when that was written, but the comment reflected the entertainment industry's beauty standards at the time. Hollywood and the music business tended to reward a very specific look. Diana Ross, Melba Moore, and Lola Falana all sort of fit that mold. In the 1970s, hell, even today, colorism and the narrow beauty standards often influenced who executives believed could carry a film visually, who was considered glamorous, marketable, or right for the camera, who they would give $1 million to, even when the person who created the role was standing right in front of them. We open the film at Aunt Em's house. Dorothy, played by Diana Ross, is a very shy, introverted woman. Family arrives and Dorothy Gale tries to make herself invisible, not fully participating, even as a visitor is shown visibly trying to court her. She's disconnected. The first words we hear from Dorothy in a sing-songy voice are,
"I don't even know the first thing about what they're feeling."
Aunt Em desires for her to get out of her house and to start a new life. She wants her to start teaching high school instead of elementary. More money, new people.
It's time for you to make a home of your own.
After this conversation, Dorothy's dog, Toto, runs out of the house into a New York blizzard, which somehow sweeps Dorothy up. It turns out Glinda the Good Witch, played by Lena Horne, is controlling the storm. The legendary beauty blows Diana right into Oz. Dorothy crashes through the giant Oz sign lighting up the skyline, accidentally killing Evermean, the Wicked Witch of the East. In the process, the Munchkins are freed, and as a thank you, Miss One gives Dorothy the witch's magical silver shoes. Miss One is fabulous, But Dorothy is really desperate to get home.
433 Prospect Place.
Miss One suggests that Dorothy follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City to get help from the great and powerful Wiz.
What's a whiz?
Robert Cohen later said, Joel Schumacher, Sidney Lumet, and Diana Ross had an interpretation of Dorothy that was neurotic. And that assessment was pretty accurate. The original Wizard of Oz and even the early Broadway run of The Wiz worked largely because of Dorothy's earnestness. Her innocence made the world of Oz feel magical, but it becomes harder to sell a grown woman wandering through this magical world with the same youthful confusion.
The yellow brick road?
Yeah! The next day, Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, who is being tormented by a gang of crows.
Hey, fellas, is today the day you gonna help me get down from here?
Help you down?
The crows force the Scarecrow to perform their anthem, You Can't Win, a song meant to break his spirit before Dorothy helps him down from the pole.
I'll help you down.
You will?
By this point, Michael and Quincy Jones have begun forming a strong working relationship on set. It somehow led to Michael asking Quincy a question. He was already thinking about his next album and wanted advice about producers he should consider. With his newfound freedom, hitting up the nightclubs, hearing disco bounce off the walls,
I like the atmosphere of Studio 54.
he was inspired, and Quincy suggested someone, himself. Quincy had wanted to work with Michael since that first meeting with Lumet. In Time magazine, Robert Cohen recalled their first recording session. He looked at Michael the way a jaguar looks at a goat, Cohen said. It was like, I want him. And who could blame him? The boy was special. Dorothy scares the crows away, and the Scarecrow, now free from the pole, is shaken by the whole ordeal. The crows had spent so much time mocking him that he begins repeating their insults himself.
If I only had a brain.
Wishing he had a brain so they could finally leave him alone. Dorothy listens, then offers a solution. They should go see the Wiz. If anyone in Oz could give the Scarecrow a brain, it would be him. So they ease on down the yellow brick road.
Ta-da!
On set, Michael approached the role with an intense seriousness. During choreography sessions, he threw himself completely into the physicality of the Scarecrow. He wanted the Scarecrow to feel boneless, elastic. He had seen Charlie Chaplin, and he was a great fan of Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, choreographer Louis Johnson said. So I let him use it. He would ask me, could I do this? And then he'd enhance it.
We'll be right back.
On their journey, they meet the Tin Man, played by Nipsey Russell.
Hello.
He tells them that he desires a heart so he could feel.
Some oil!
When Dorothy and the Scarecrow loosen him up with oil, he joins the crew. Nipsey Russell's performance is incredible here, and he's truly one of the bright spots of the film. Further down the road, they meet the Lion, played by Ted Ross. He talks big at first.
How dare you!
But it quickly becomes clear that what he really wants is courage.
A lion without any courage. Oh!
And they encourage him to join the crew as well. As a child, I never saw The Wizard of Oz. The Wiz was the default in my household. And if you grew up watching this as a kid, the tone shift after they all meet each other is really jarring. What starts as a colorful musical suddenly turns darker, like an art house horror flick. I still skip through this subway scene because, it's scary as hell. In Essence magazine, writer Sharon Stockard Martin shared how this film is an accurate depiction of the Black experience in America. Martin states that it is the story of innocence taken by an uncompromising force and deposited in the midst of a strange and beautiful, but evil land. Sound familiar? The symbolism is really clear in this subway scene, but either way, there's some scary shit. The crew finally reaches the Emerald City, and they are met with the citizens who are seen in green, caught dead in red, and dressed in golden gold. And there's Quincy Jones.
Send up the one with the silver slippers.
The Wiz spots Dorothy wearing the Wicked Witch's silver slippers, and now she's the most important person in the city. Dorothy refuses to come up unless she can bring her friends and Toto.
Send up the riffraff.
The Wiz first appears as a massive floating steel head with piercing laser eyes. During the scene, as with most things, Diana committed fully to the act. Instead of glancing away from the lights, she stared directly into the eyes of the giant mechanical face while delivering her lines. The next morning, she woke up unable to see. Doctors determined that the powerful stage lighting had caused retinal burns, and they warned that if the damage had been more severe, she could have lost her sight permanently. After treatment and a short recovery, she returned to set the following week. But from that point on, Diana Ross had a permanent sensitivity to bright light. The Wiz tells them that to get what they want, they must kill Evermean's sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, Eveline. We see a small glimpse of who's behind the mask.
Have you made your decision yet, Dorothy?
The group decides to do what the Wiz told them to do. They feel like they have no choice.
Then how do we find Eveline?
Don't worry, she'll find you.
On the way to Eveline's sweatshop, they are ambushed by her flying monkey henchmen. The Tin Man is literally pressed flat in a giant machine. The Scarecrow is cut in half. The lion is strung up by his tail. Eveline wants one thing.
Stole her shoes! Give them to me!
To force her hand, she threatens to throw Toto in the furnace. But the Scarecrow, even in pieces, has an idea. He tells Dorothy to turn on the sprinklers. The water rains down across the factory floor and melts Eveline where she sits. With her gone, the sweatshop workers are freed, and suddenly it feels like a brand new day. Believing they have fulfilled the Wiz's command, the group returns to the Emerald City to claim what they were promised. But when they finally confront the Wiz, they discover the truth. He is not an almighty ruler at all. His name is
Harlan Smith from Atlantic City!
A washed-up politician from Atlantic City who arrived in Oz by accident in a hot air balloon. He'd been conning the people of Oz all along.
And I've seen men shot for less.
The Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion are all crushed. They believe that they will never receive the brain, heart, and courage they came searching for. But Dorothy reminds them of something simple.
You've had them all along.
The Scarecrow had the ideas, the Tin Man showed compassion, and the Lion found bravery when it mattered.
You never needed anything from a fake wizard anyway.
They already had what they were looking for.
What about you, Dorothy? You'll never get home.
Linda the Good Witch shows up, suggesting that Dorothy use the silver slippers to get home.
By clicking my heels 3 times.
Dorothy sings the consummate song Home and clicks her heels 3 times. And we find her back at Aunt Em's house.
All across the country, they're lining up on the yellow brick road. The Wiz is fabulous. Marvelous.
Initially, the reviews in the trades were positive.
But it's fun. It's worth going to see, that's for sure.
But Universal had reason to worry. The film had cost $24 million to produce, with another $8 million tacked on for advertising. When The Wiz opened in October 1978, it struggled to recoup that investment, ultimately earning around $21 million at the box office. As the weeks went on, the reviews grew more harsh. One critic at the New York Times wrote that The Wiz was a mess, blaming what he called misguided attempts to transform the lively stage musical into something resembling a ghetto fairy tale.
With Diana Ross, suddenly the question was going to be, was The Wiz going to be turned into a glitzy one-woman show?
Much of the criticism focused on Diana Ross's portrayal of Dorothy, less on her actual performance and more on the mere fact that she had the audacity to play the beloved Dorothy Gale. But when you read the full range of reviews from the time, another current runs beneath them. For some critics and industry observers, the scale of the production seemed to amplify their skepticism. The implication, sometimes subtle and sometimes not, was that a film this large, this expensive, centered on entirely Black performers and Black culture, I don't think there's one white person in the film, simply could not succeed. And that sentiment feels strangely familiar. It's said that this film's box office failure contributed to companies not wanting to invest at all in any all-Black productions. essentially ending them just as Black movies, mainly due to the Blaxploitation era, started to become more prevalent in Hollywood.
Oh, I'm so excited. I talked about it today, reading the book, if you would get to the actual version of The Wiz. Baum never described Dorothy, and he did it purposely because he wanted everybody to have a Dorothy.
Diana was devastated by the reaction to the film. This project really meant something to her. Robert Cohen later said, "She loved success very much, and Diana was very burned by The Wiz. She believed it would have been a good idea and was totally traumatized by the critical reaction to it." After the film, Cohen left Motown.
How about the acting part? Was it hard on you? It was your first acting job, right?
Yeah, but a lot of people helped me, professional actors, people like Diana Ross, Ryan O'Neal, Sidney Poitier, they helped me. But I enjoyed it.
Michael, on the other hand, did not carry the same burden. His reviews were mixed. The Cincinnati Enquirer even wrote that he was too cloying and sweetie poo for the Scarecrow. But as a supporting character, the backlash did not land squarely on him. In fact, another film was already being discussed. A project called Summer Stock, about young performers trying to make it in a chorus line, with Ken Harper attached as producer. He stopped seeing Stephanie. She didn't like the people he was hanging around, feeling like they didn't have his best interest at heart. But he felt he had a purpose.
It was a lot of fun working with all the greats, Sidney Lumet, Quincy Jones, everybody.
In November, Quincy Jones signed a contract to produce Michael's next album. It would become Off the Wall. While Michael was stepping into the most important creative partnership of his life, Diana was moving in the opposite direction. For her, The Wiz had not opened a door. It had closed one. Though The Wiz would later grow into a cult classic, passed down through families and embraced by new audiences, Diana Ross, the movie star, had begun to fade.
You're surrounded by people, I'm sure, all of the time, people who are concerned about your career. Do you have control over your own career?
I haven't always had, and because I am a grown-up and got children and responsibilities, I'm making much more decisions in the last 2 years than I've made in the beginning of my career.
Still, she remained a singular figure in Hollywood, the first Black woman for whom writers were pitching starring vehicles frequently. Ryan O'Neal later approached her about starring in a film called The Bodyguard, but the project didn't move forward due to her own misgivings. Diana would not appear in another film for 16 years.
Very invested his savings into that first film, Lady Sings the Blues. Because of me, I don't think anybody else in the business would have put that kind of money behind an unknown singer that wanted to be an actress.
If I asked you what your idea of the perfect life would be for you,
yes,
what would it be?
I picture myself in some beautiful home with a lot of land around me. I want some space. I want to be where there's grass.
Instead, she began to try to find herself. She had climbed so far, achieved so much, but her life felt at a crossroads. After her divorce, she left the marital home and started looking for a house in Connecticut where she could live with her daughters. But the idea of home for Diana became something deeper than a physical place. She told People magazine in 1978, "Home is like Linda the Good Witch said at the end of the film, it's knowing yourself. And as the saying goes, there's no place like home."